Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. And today we're going to be looking at something pretty interesting in Power Query. We're going to be going through the Guid.From function and all the interesting things that it can do for us.
Yeah, I love this function.
Oh, yeah. It's a good one. And we're going to be looking at the Microsoft documentation for this.
Awesome.
So you might be thinking, what on earth is a GOD and why do I need to create one in Excel?
Right.
Yeah. That's a great question, and we're going to answer that today. So without further ado, let's just jump right in.
Sounds good.
So imagine you have this massive library with like millions of books.
Okay.
And you need a way to like uniquely identify each book.
Right.
That's where these GeoIDs come in.
Yeah, these globally unique identifiers are like fingerprints for data that ensure that each piece of information is like distinct from everything else.
Gotcha.
And this is super important when you're like tracking inventory, managing customer records, or even building these complex databases where you need to make sure that every single piece of information has its own unique ID.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So looking at this documentation here, the syntax for this function is actually very simple.
Oh, yeah. Super straightforward.
You just call Guid from, and you pass in some text, and it spits out a Guid type value.
Exactly. And that text that you give it can be anything.
Okay.
Like a customer's email address, a product code, even a random string of characters.
Oh, that's cool.
It doesn't really matter.
And so this Guid type value that it returns is like a special format that Power Query uses to represent GeoDs.
Right. It's specifically designed for working with GEIDs in the Power Query environment.
I see.
Makes things much easier to manage.
So looking at this documentation, it says that Guid.From actually checks the format of the input text.
Oh, yeah. It's not just blindly creating GEIDs.
Oh, that's good.
It's actually making sure that the input is in a proper format.
Okay, great.
Before it goes ahead and generates that unique identifier.
And what happens if we give it a null?
That's a great question. So if you feed DILD from a null value, it's going to handle it very gracefully.
Okay.
It's simply going to return null. It's not going to throw an error or anything like that.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, it's very forgiving in that sense.
Yeah, very helpful when you're working with those messy real-world data sets.
Exactly. You're bound to run into some missing values here and there.
Exactly.
And Guid.From is prepared for that.
Awesome.
So let's say you're building a customer database.
Okay.
And you need to assign a unique identifier to each customer.
Right.
You could use Guid.From to generate a GUID based on their email address.
That's a good idea.
Or maybe some other unique text field that you have in your data.
And that way, even if two customers have the same name,
exactly,
they would still have separate unique IDs.
Exactly. Their orders, their preferences, their entire history would remain distinct.
Wow.
You wouldn't have any accidental mix-ups.
So we're not just talking about preventing duplicates within a single spreadsheet.
Right.
This is like across an entire database.
Absolutely. It's about ensuring data integrity at a much larger scale.
That's super powerful.
Yeah, and it's not just limited to customer databases either. Think about version control systems, where you're tracking changes in documents or software code.
Right.
GUIDs can be used to uniquely identify each version.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
So you can easily track revisions, rollback changes if needed.
It's pretty cool.
It's like having a detailed history of every modification made to your files.
It's like a fingerprint for every single version.
Exactly.
Wow.
Each one is completely unique.
So essentially, it sounds like we're using this to track any piece of information that needs a unique and reliable identifier.
Precisely. It's about adding that extra layer of certainty to your data.
Okay.
So we've talked about using text as input for Guid.
Right.
But I'm curious, could there be other ways to generate GELs?
I don't know.
What if we need to track something that doesn't have a clear text identifier? Could we use dates, timestamps, or even combinations of different data types to create even more specialized GUIDs?
That's a good question.
That's something I'm really curious to explore further.
Yeah, that's a great point. It sounds like the possibilities are pretty much endless.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of untapped potential there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all these amazing insights today. You've given us a lot to think about when it comes to leveraging GI for robust data management.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for another deep dive. See you next time.
See ya.